The president also discussing the latest developments in China after they exempted 16 U.S. products from additional tariffs today.
I think they did the right thing. I think it was good for them, but they took them off. Yeah, I think it was a gesture. Okay, but it was a big move. People were shocked. I wasn't shocked.
Now, despite the good news, a new survey shows that American companies are still canceling investments. In fact, they're canceling them at a faster rate. So what does this all mean as the two sides prepare to meet next month? I want to bring in former Commerce Department Deputy Director Chris Garcia. So, Chris, in the last week, we've seen certain overtures from China with regard to the extradition situation in Hong Kong, agreeing to meet in October. Then this week, we've seen a series of olive branches of sorts, coupled with continuing poor economic data out of that country that suggests that they are certainly under pressure and maybe showing that pressure with these overtures.
Yeah, Charles, and on a day that we'll never forget, on September 11th, I just returned from a Pepperdine University memorial prayer service that pays tribute to each of the victims by placing 3,000 American flags on the front line. I'd like to thank Pat Boone and I'd like to thank Pepperdine President Jim Gash for continuing that memorial. But with respect to the China trade dispute, I think that this survey really backs up and actually bolsters President Trump's negotiating position. It proves that he was right all along. American businesses are saying that the top two concerns are intellectual property protection and access to the Chinese market. And what we've seen is that China, now that the light is being shed on the Chinese unfair trade practices, what we're seeing is that they've forced technology transfers. They've actually, in fact, stolen IP. What we're looking at from the president is not just the protection of IP and the end of forced technology transfers, but also the stopping of subsidies, the subsidies from state-owned enterprises to state-owned enterprises or Chinese companies outright, because they outright block American companies from competing. And so all President Trump would like to see, and this goes back to both Peter Navarro and Larry Kudlow's ask, which is to have zero subsidies, zero tariffs, zero non-tariff barriers. But it's great to see the business community backing up President Trump with a survey.
Although in this American Chamber of Commerce survey you referred to, the third most important outcome for businesses are increased purchases of U.S. goods. I would think that might be number one for President Trump. And by the way, the easiest thing perhaps for China to do, hey, we'll buy more of your stuff. The harder thing is that intellectual property, particularly as they still want to be the preeminent nation in the world. And I think that's the sticky point. The South China Morning Post saying yesterday that a deal could be done this year if America would just go with 80% of what they had on the table. But IP, how critical is it that that's in there?
Yeah, the IP provisions is basic. I mean, if a company invests this much money in R&D, invests billions and billions of dollars, as we do as U.S. companies, in new technologies, those technologies should be protected. It's basic property right protection. And so that's why the White House negotiators have said that any new deal with China, and it looks like American businesses concur with that, is that any new deal with China must include enforceable provisions.
Right.
Talk is one thing, but when you have Beijing walking away from the table, as they did in May, that shows me that maybe perhaps they're not ready to make the substantive changes that are required for this deal.
Chris, you know, you could look at the 28% that say they want improved intellectual property protection in a different way. That's almost 70. That's over 70% that say they don't care. They're okay with a Faustian deal. They're okay getting ripped off as long as they have access to that market. What do we say to companies that are okay with being ripped off as long as they can get access to 1.3 billion additional customers?
Well, I think it's not a good thing for American workers to see those companies okay with that IP theft. But it may be also that they don't have sensitive technologies or sensitive IP that's being exploited by China. So that might be a way that we can read that survey as well. But again, the White House has, in that respect, offered sound advice to U.S. businesses. While we do want to make sure that we have access to the Chinese market, we also want to make sure on the other side that we force China to play by the rules by diversifying U.S. manufacturers' supply chains. So if we can find a way to get China to feel that pressure, again, there might be a little bit of short-term pain, right, but in the long run, we'll have more protected intellectual property rights, we'll have more prosperous American companies, and at the end of the day, we want a fair, free, and reciprocal trading relationship with China, which will be good for everybody.
And Chris, I think they're already feeling that pressure. Chris, thank you very much. Appreciate it.